Phil may show up of those bids.
He told me he was probably going to be here at about 6 o'clock.
Oh,
So
we'll be gone hopefully.
I don't, I told him we weren't waiting for him, but if he was here, then great. So I guess with that, we will go ahead and start the meeting. Meeting is called to order. We do have a quorum. We have a full house with Lauren appearing by Zoom. First order of business is to accept the minutes of the January 6th regular meeting. Do I have a motion?
You do.
Second.
Moved by Phil, second by Shay. Is there any discussion or corrections for the minutes? Another good job by Tina. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Visitor comments and petitions. Is there anybody here on, there's nobody here in person, so anybody on the Zoom call that has something they want to address that is not on the agenda already?
The page was coming. I don't know if he,
Hearing none. That was visitor comments and petitions. I think. Does anybody have an inclination to go out of order and address, well, at least Steve Miller is here for the draft about Mac Point. Entertain a motion to address that first. Moved by Phil.
Second.
Second by Melissa. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. We are out of order and we're going to take up the Mac Point draft. There's some question about how this wants to be sent out if the select board agrees to the language. And I thought first, here somewhere. Here it is. This page. So Steve has put together a draft of a proposed either letter or press release from the select board in accordance with what we talked about at our last meeting. Steve, thank you for putting this together. I really appreciate it. Has everybody here had a chance to review the draft? Steve, do you have anything you want to add to this before we get into a discussion on it, or?
Well, maybe just by way of background, I could say that I am beginning to feel the need to be a little more public about our concerns and our, and by our, I guess I'm really meaning mainly Islesboro Islands Trust and the town of Islesboro. But our, support for choosing Mac Point, if there is to be an offshore wind port in Penobscot Bay. We've been, pretty silent in terms of media, and yet there have been a few things that I have learned in the last couple of weeks that make me feel a little bit more inclined to be public. I do want to discuss this strategy with our attorney. I had initially thought I was meeting or having a telephone meeting with him on tomorrow, but instead it'll be Monday. But I'm inclined to create some form of press release early next week. I would write it either Monday or Tuesday, send it out Tuesday. Tuesday's a good day to send out that kind of thing. And it would be wonderful to have the press release indicate that the town of Islesboro or the Islesboro Select Board have indeed adopted a statement, and then include some portion of this statement in that press release. It could be that the press release is almost entirely about the board's position, taking that position or adopting this position. Or it could be that the press release would benefit from mentioning both your position and Islesboro Islands Trust with a little bit of background to that. One of the pieces of information that has come our way is that the Department of Transportation has already begun some geotechnical borings on Sears Island. And that was something that had been recommended by the Moffett and Nickel consultants, but it was not clear to anybody until folks found these people out there doing this research, that it would occur so soon. I had been under the impression that there would be a stakeholder review and discussion initiated before any further research. And there is zero indication that DOT is doing any form of further exploration of the possibility of the port being over at Mac Point. So, so that was of considerable concern to me. A Belfast resident, friend of IIT, got in touch with Jan Dodge and discussed this with her, and she kind of revealed that the company that runs tugboats in and up, up and down the bay, and even up the river to Bucksport and further, I guess, have already contacted her and indicated specifically that they were strongly in favor of developing this port at Sears Island. So I'm quite concerned about what that might all mean, and so subject to discussion with council on Monday. We feel the advocacy committee here at IIT feels that it's probably really ripe for a more public statement. So how we do that is somewhat, up to you guys. I would very much like to see, if possible, you folks acknowledge that this statement summarizes the way you feel about this situation in offshore wind deployment in Penobscot Bay. And then before mentioning you all in a press release, I would run the language past you, but I would do so in a timely fashion by email and early next week, and ask that tonight you say you agree that if I don't hear any negative response within, say, 24 hours, then you're okay with me sending out that release. An alternative would be to have a letter and have the letter go to other select boards or other municipal governments in Penobscot Bay, but I'm a little concerned about what would be their incentive to even weigh in on this at this point. The select board in Searsport did discuss this at their meeting last night, but took no definitive position. But other towns would be saying, well, if it's going to be in Penobscot Bay, why would we care? And I think that there is an argument for why they should care, but I'm not sure that that would resonate really strongly. So right now, I'm not sure that that's a strong, that there's a strong reason to undertake that kind of outreach. A third alternative is to contact the governor's office directly. We're in touch with one of Governor Baldacci's chief advisors, who was very involved with the Sears Island Planning Initiative back in the aughts, and she will be just talking with our attorney tomorrow and developing a little bit of a better idea of how best to approach the governor's office. So I'm kind of waiting to see what results from that conversation. So I've been a little bit long-winded here, but I guess the bottom line is that there's a fair amount happening, and I very much appreciate the select board's concerns, willingness to listen to the concerns that we're raising. And this evening would ultimately ask or hope that you might adopt this statement as indication of the way you feel about this, the alternatives that are being discussed about offshore wind deployment in Penobscot Bay, and wait until Monday to find out about the press release.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Steve, again, for taking the time to put this together. I think it really encapsulates what we talked about at our previous meeting about this. And I think, I really like the last paragraph in terms of what we talked about. The optics of just removing oil tanks to replace it with a port that services new green energy technology strikes me as a really nice, just from the outside optics looks good. And so I'm in favor of adopting this statement tonight. I'll open it up to the floor for discussion from the select board. If anybody has any questions for Steve or any points of discussion or comments or changes.
Little clarification, Sears Island, is there a port there? Or are they gonna
There's no port. It's green. Wait, there is a pier at the end, right? Steve, is there one pier at the end of Sears Island right now? A small pier?
No, there's no official landing of that sort at all. The Department of Transportation began to develop a cargo port on Sears Island in the late 80s. There's a long story behind it, and it's not a very pleasant one. But to your point, they did dump some granite into what's referred to as a jetty that's in the northwest quadrant of Sears Island. So you see something protruding from Sears Island there, but it's rough granite. In fact, it's fairly difficult to walk on. I was out there about a year ago checking on the plastic spill, and it's not that easy because they're big chunks and there are big gaps in between them and so forth. But that's as close as there is to anything like a dock on Sears Island.
So this would be from a ground up construction, right? But that already exists in Mac Point, correct? The port already is ready for operation, has been ready, has received materials, wind materials already, right?
Well, they are receiving wind components at Mac Point for development in upland locations right now, Phil, you're right. Those are, however, I'm told are significantly smaller in size than the turbines that would be built offshore. And so they need a different kind of facility or a docking facility. They're talking about a K, Q-U-A-Y. I think it's pronounced K. Correct me if I'm wrong. In any event, it would be a large filled level area interfacing with the bay. Phase two, or the full build out would mean you would have over 1,000 feet of length against which you could bring barges to put these humongous things on. They're 800 feet tall. That's how they're really big. In any event, and there's a whole lot of backfill. So whether this was built on Sears Island or Mac Point, there would be a lot of new construction. However, the Moffitt and Nichols study showed that it could be either at Mac Point or on Sears Island. Mac Point, the location at Mac Point wouldn't interfere with the two piers that they currently have, where they do still have commerce and would continue to have commerce. It would be right next to that, just to the west of those. And that area used to have a pier probably in the 1930s and 40s. I could send it to you all after the meeting, but we found a photo of the area with this third pier, so-called. And Lang had given me a postcard that depicted the coal facility there. So where it would be built was industrial in the past, and it would just be repurposed for this type of deployment at Mac Point. Sears Island is virtually intact ecosystem, except for some granite that goes out into the bay.
Which is going to cost more.
According to Moffitt and Nichols analysis, which I think is highly suspect, honestly, and they acknowledge that it was pretty cursory, that there's only a concept paper and not a detailed analysis. But they indicate that Sears Island would cost considerably more. The reason they say that is because, at least with information that they had available, there would not need to be dredging where the K is located at Sears Island, but there would need to be dredging where the K would be located at Mac Point. And so the price differential is essentially due to the need for dredging over at Mac Point.
Is there any difference in the environmental impact?
Huge. And that's where this particular initial bit of research and consultancy, I think, fell way short. the cargo port wasn't built over on Sears Island because of the ecological damage it would have occurred, that would have brought about. And this is a bigger, more invasive kind of an endeavor. And why that isn't reason to just say, hey, okay, we better stay away from that, really surprises me. But the mitigation costs for building at Sears Island, I think, would throw the numbers totally the other way.
Well, that was my impression, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Phil.
Any other questions from select board members?
I would say I agree. I really like the tenor of the statement. I think it states our position clearly, but it also does so in a positive way, and I appreciate you drafting it in that way.
Anybody from the public want to chime in with questions, concerns? Melissa, go ahead.
What would be the harm in sending out, provided that the attorneys, give the go-ahead for the press release? But what about doing the press release with the letter and then also sending a letter to the other local select boards around? That way they have a heads up essentially of what we're doing.
We could certainly circulate the press release to other towns. I don't
Yeah.
think there's any harm in doing that. And
Because Steve was saying either do the press release or send a letter to.
so I think we talked about having this particular document either be a letter or be a press release. I don't think there's, I think just thinking about it now, it might make more sense to have it be a press release that could just be sent to anybody who was, who we thought it was worthwhile to send to.
I'm all for all three. Do a press release, send it to everybody within spitting distance of us, and then send it directly to the governor's office.
I agree with Melissa. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt this statement to be used, as we've discussed tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Lauren, second by Melissa. Have we decided whether Lauren can? Well, it doesn't matter.
I can make a motion, but I can't vote.
Great, go ahead. Well, the motion is made, and I think it'll be clear if everybody votes for it that, anyway, so motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The statement is adopted. Steve, I appreciate your hard work on this. And I guess if there's anything that needs to be done in the short term, you can email me about it or email Janet, and we can move forward with that.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you all and you taking the time to engage in this particular situation. And I expect I will be getting back to you all Monday or Tuesday after I talk with our attorney and we come up with a more clear plan about the press release.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So are we not doing anything with this until he gets his press release?
We ought to put it on town letterhead and have a place for people to sign, and we can sign it and then have it ready to go out, I think.
For the next meeting or prior to that, just pop in and sign?
If we had it drafted ahead of time, and then I don't really know what the timeline is going to be. I think Steve will follow up sometime next week, and there's no harm in getting it ready. And if we can sign it ahead of time, so we're not waiting 2 weeks, I think that would be ideal.
Okay.
Thanks, Janet. That sounds like a good idea.
All right, thank you. I'd entertain a motion to go back into order.
So moved.
Moved by Phil,
Second.
second by Shay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
See you, Steve. Back in order, ferry service update. John King sent around today a pretty detailed explanation about what happened at the advisory board meeting. I don't want to go through it all today. It's just a lot, but I think one of the main takeaways is that the ferry service is open to recommendations from the town about the summer, fall, and winter schedule and how to make changes to those dates, and are looking for some dialogue with the town about what the town might like to see for the ferry schedule. And I know that in the fall, I received complaints from many people who were stuck at the ferry who thought that they went to the fall or winter schedule too early and that there were a lot of cars that are waiting and getting left behind. And I think this is a good opportunity to reach out to some of those folks and get their thoughts on what the ferry schedule might be and let them have a thought about that and be involved in the process so we can try to take those concerns into consideration and make that recommendation to the ferry about what we'd like to see. I know that we've talked about trying to get better data from the ferry service about ridership and about cars left behind to try to help make that decision in a more sort of data-based way, which I think is a useful thing to do. I mean, it's not good to make a policy because one person got left behind and is frustrated, but if we could show that there's a trend in the data, I think that's a pretty strong reason to say we should have this vote because we're leaving people behind all the time. So I don't know that there's much to do on that right now, but I did want to bring that up as a potential issue. And so it's in everybody's mind to think about what we think and we'd like to do for the ferry service and perhaps to talk to others in the community who have raised those issues and see what we can come up with for a recommendation to the ferry service. And again, I don't think this is something that is pressing right now. We're in, the winter schedule, and I think what we're looking at is mostly a year away, but it would be nice to start the dialogue with the ferry service and say, this is what we think is reasonable. And I think that part of what we might see is a move away from a 3-season schedule and a move to a 2-season schedule where you have a summer and a winter schedule, and which,
When the rates change.
yeah, so that might, I mean, you're going to have that as a potential issue, right? The rate change is going to be part of that discussion too. And so it's not happening in a vacuum. So I just throw that out to the select board to think about, and to hopefully at the next meeting, we might have a more detailed discussion about that. And if we could put that on the agenda for like its own item to think about what the town might recommend. And again, we don't have to have a decision at the next meeting. It's just good to be heading in that direction so we can have a useful dialogue with the ferry service who has expressed a willingness to work with the town on that point. So any questions about the ferry service update before we move on? And perhaps we ought to incorporate John's email into the minutes just to help.
I've given everybody a copy, but
Yeah, so there's a lot of information there that I
it's
think.
great, it's like being
Yeah.
there.
I did a great job.
All right, moving on. Sea level rise update. Shay.
We had our Sea Level Rise Committee meeting just before the select board meeting, so it's all pretty fresh. I think some of the high points, we've got subcommittees working on a variety of different things. I know that Janet is working to get a meeting with the committee and formerly CEFs who did the engineering report at the Narrows to start to get some more details about infrastructure improvement needs and kind of provide some more community input on the recommendations that they did in 2020 since state recommendations have changed. Lauren is coordinating a group of volunteers who are taking capturing images of some of the recent kind of extreme weather and extreme tides so that we will have a repository going forward of some of the things that are happening. And it's pretty, I mean, there are things happening to capture, and that is important, especially as we start to look to potential grant funding sources. So that is really great, and it's great to have community volunteers doing that. So thank you, Lauren. The other thing that we talked about a little bit is that will have implications for the select board is there is a new program which is called, I feel like everything is like Community Resilience Partnership, but those are the words that are coming to mind right now that I think is coming out of the governor's office of policy innovation in the future. It basically is a grant making program that I think Islesboro is well positioned to take advantage of. We were approached recently by a consultant who is on Vinyl Haven, Gabe McPhail, who is interested in helping Islesboro apply as it's a service provider grant, basically in order to be eligible to participate in the program and access these funds. The select board has to adopt a resolution. They have some draft language, but we need to modify it to our unique situation. And there are some specific action items that we need to kind of match and detail to the state how the work of our town committees, particularly the Energy Committee and the Sea Level Rise Committee, kind of fit within their framework. Once we kind of jump through those hoops, it opens us up to be eligible to apply for up to $50,000 for funding for efficiency projects. So by supporting Gabe and having her basically help us, she's funded to help us navigate that process
Right?
with the hope that by September, we would be applying for one of those grants to support
Great.
our work, which means that once that process goes through, we will be coming back kind of with some draft resolution language for us to adopt.
I have a question. Does she no longer work with Andy?
I don't think so. I think she's doing her own independent consulting work. Yep. Yeah, she was the town planner for Vinyl Haven for the past 3 or 4 years and
Yeah.
led a lot of their sea level rise work. So she's a great person and a great resource for us.
Good.
So. Anything else that you'd want to add from today, Lauren? Oh, you're muted.
I'm looking for my mute button. No, I thought it was a great meeting. There's a lot of pieces falling into place thanks to the work that Shay's done in bringing in 3 great resources. I think we're really pulling a dynamite plan together. So thank you, Shay. It's been really neat to see this process unfold. Excellent, excellent process.
Well, it looks like we've got 3 committee members on Zoom, so it is great to have such an active committee and folks that are really taking on leadership in different areas. It is exciting to see some movement.
Yeah, great. Good update. Thanks for all the hard work, guys. Anybody have any questions before we move on? Hearing none. Upcoming meetings and subcommittee reports, January 24th, Planning Board. Paige, are you here for anything in particular?
Just gonna talk to you guys about this whole streaming game.
Great.
Do that with public stuff. Whenever that's down towards the end, that's fine.
Okay. Bill, do you have a need to open these bids? Should we try to go out of order? Or are you?
I'm fine.
Okay. Let's continue. Town manager's report.
Right, I found out late today. I apologize after the warrant and the recap. We had problems yesterday, Kathy did. So I sent you out, so I sent you an email from Dave Tesla regarding the creation of this ad hoc committee, but the Grimmer Point Light Station Restoration Committee, which he will come up under new business. You have next we'll go over correspondence from Vern and Dominic Patsy. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm beginning this week the search process for Linda Wentworth replacement. We're going to be placing some ads, and I've consulted David Coombs, our old PA, our first PA, who actually was headed to Stowe, Vermont to some PA convention. So he's going to take our information and blast it around there. But he gave some good suggestions for places that he thought might. So I think we're feeling good about starting that process.
Great.
So that's all I have.
Is there any thought about hiring a nurse practitioner versus a PA?
Oh, yeah, it's nurse, that's how it's, well, it's nurse practitioner or, yeah.
I just didn't know I raised that question before. If we had only nurse practitioners, do we not need a supervising position?
We do still, because we're.
Or because it's a rural
center.
health center?
Yeah, if they, like on North Haven, I think they just had nurse practitioners and it's not a, I won't say it's not a real health center, but it's not as organized, say, as ours. So I don't think they still, I think Dory said they still had a doctor that they referenced, but
Just thought I'd raise it as a question that,
I know it comes up quite often.
any questions for Janet or any further updates? Hearing none, moving on, correspondence, Superintendent of Schools, Dominic DePatsy, request to meet regarding the ICS's budget.
Normally, the superintendent would come to a selectmen's meeting or a workshop, you know, so it sounded like he said Dave Dyer. So,
I can't recall if we had a meeting last year.
no, I don't think
Because
so.
of COVID.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
got together.
Is there,
I
is,
don't remember what he did the year before. Chuck might have come.
I mean, it strikes me as a fine thing to get together with the superintendent and with the head of the school board to talk about budgets. I'm not clear what exactly the agenda would be. I feel like a lot of times there's a lot of discussion about whether a particular item should be in the town's budget or the school's budget, which I don't really want to spend time on because they're all coming from the same pocket. And I don't think that's a useful, use of budget time, but I'm happy to have a conversation
So
about.
are they pretty much done with their budget? Melissa, do you know?
I do not know.
Because usually it's when they're done, isn't it, Shay? I mean, you've been on the school board. Then come kind of tell the selectmen what to expect. Or what
I feel like
they're-
it's done, I feel like it's been done both ways, and I think, it probably is a good thing for the community broadly if there's a kind of pre-meeting and a post-meeting. I don't see any harm in having a conversation just to, kind of as we each key up our budget specifics to have either kind of flags here, things that we're thinking about, or, because it is a new superintendent, are there specific things that would be helpful from a town perspective to, kind of highlight? I don't know.
It does seem like there's a possibility to try to coordinate, especially larger projects with the town and the school so that, for example, we don't have the town and the school trying to have big jumps for a particular project the same year if we can avoid that. And sometimes you can't, but it'd just be nice to help the budget not spike in one particular year.
Are you good with the time that he's saying anytime after lunch? Because on the 27th, what time does the school committee meeting begin? Don't they have it on Thursday?
Yeah, but that's the first Thursday of every month.
Oh, so he's just here on that 27th.
He's at the school every Thursday. And so that's why he's suggesting
Okay.
that one. And then he typically tries to take the 3 o'clock off because he lives some ways away,
So he would be leaving on the 3:30.
or the 4:30. And if it's one of those that nobody could meet until later, then we'll quicksilver him off as appropriate.
It's a week away.
And would you rather meet in person than Zoom with him, maybe?
I sort
Yeah.
of prefer face-to-face meetings, but I don't think it would be a real hardship to have him participate via Zoom.
I think that it would be better with him to have it in person for the first time. That way everybody gets to meet each other and can kind of feel each other out more. And that way it can be clear as to what the select board's looking for from him and vice versa.
It seems a little early for us to be meeting on January 27th when we haven't even opened up our budget yet I think we ought to push that back a little bit until I don't know how everybody else feels about that, but if he wants to show up and have an informational meeting, it's going to be more of a one-way conversation because we haven't really gone through our budget yet, or seen the requests from the various departments. So
You want to push it back a couple of weeks, or?
when are we starting our budgeting process?
We will be starting probably the first week in February, or excuse me, the second week.
I mean, it could be that he just wants to meet and talk to align the schedules so that they can plan their process around when it makes sense and can be most helpful to have information to bring to the select board. So I feel like
That's fine
that to me
too.
is kind of,
Yeah.
it seems like it could be a pretty informal conversation. It could just be, you and the superintendent, maybe even, rather than bringing school, school board and select board into it.
That's fine too.
To try to align some schedules. He would be here for the school board meeting the 3rd. So then we have him, for lack of better words, trapped on island
Yeah.
until 5:30 when he has to do his school board meeting anyways. So if anybody would want to meet in the afternoon,
Let's do that.
you know,
And I'll check and see when we're starting. Let's.
if that could work, it's a good informal meeting.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
So for you all, do you think like 3:30 or 4? 3:30, that would be good.
Four,
I think 4.
4?
four.
See what he says.
Yeah, it's already in his calendar.
The perks.
He's fine with it.
Okay,
I just put it in his calendar.
oh, you put it in his calendar,
I'm the one that makes his schedule.
oh. So whether he likes it or not.
So he's fine with
It's on
it.
his schedule.
All right, I'm gonna put it on. For us, all right, so that's a selectmen's meeting,
Is it 5:30 that day?
right, so at 4 o'clock, we'll figure it out.
Okay, any more?
Because I can pull him straight from the school and bring him here. And then somebody else can take him back up to the school for his meeting and I'll be here for that one.
Any further discussion about that? I think we've reached a good resolution. Hearing none, on to the update from Vern LD 1806. This is the change in maps or the change in the boundary line for Waldo and Knox County around the southern end of the Islesboro archipelago, as it were.
That sounds lovely.
It sure does. It's nice down there. It's tropical.
Archipelago.
And Vern has, I know he participated in a hearing. I think that was last week. Last week, anyway, we now have maps about exactly what we're talking about, which is interesting to see. And really, it's sort of what we expected when we were talking about it before, but at least now we have it on a piece of paper. And LaSalle, I believe, is the only occupied island, and the plan would be to leave LaSalle as an unorganized territory. It would not become part of Islesboro or require the town of Islesboro to provide services to that island or to the other unorganized territories that are down there. And I know I've seen emails go by about another hearing that's coming up that I think Vern is going to participate in as well. And it sounds as though there really isn't a concern from the town's perspective because it's not going to become part of the town of Islesboro, but Vern is going to participate and be prepared to voice objections if it turns out that it's not exactly what we expect, which is hard to, but all signs point to it being a largely inconsequential change from the town of Islesboro's perspective, I think. So again, I don't know that we've ever had an answer about why they're considering changing the boundary of the county, but so be it, I guess.
And I thought something he said that originally was in Waldo. He's looked up something from the state Bureau of Taxation, and they think it is Waldo. He taxed.
There's a story in the Pembe Pilot about it. It was pretty informative.
Oh, yeah? Is there a reason?
Just that there was a cartographic error.
Yeah, but then the next question is, who cares?
Not any reason why there.
Yeah, how
Oh.
many years ago?
Right. They were talking about, last time we had the gentleman on from the representative said that it happened in the early 1900s. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm not gonna worry about it. I guess I don't know who would answer the questions, but are there any questions that we might either bring to Vern's attention or anybody thoughts, questions, concerns, ideas?
Are they looking to move it back to the pink line?
They are looking,
Or the
no.
blue line?
So the
Is the
blue
orange
line
is
on the
current?
other page, I believe, this is the proposed line.
The blue, and the yellow is what it currently is on this map.
Gotcha.
Yes. So, yeah, and I think, this is the proposal. These are historical lines.
Gotcha.
that disagree with each other for various reasons. And it looks like we're heading back towards the boundary, the county boundary from 1891 to 1935, which was a good year for county lines, from what I remember. All right, moving on. Go over Islesboro looking ahead. I have not updated that yet, so let's push that off until the next meeting. Next is new business, opening the bids for the 2 Town of Islesboro Septic System Small Community Grant Program. We are not awarding anything. Do we make a recommendation to the state, or do we just open them and send them the information, they do whatever they do, or do we say we prefer this bid for?
I'm gonna add that to, when I submit them to, state, I recommend, and then I'll come back to you people after we get her okay.
Okay. Does anybody want to open? Phil does the honors. Great. Open bids for 2 Town of Islesboro septic systems not to be awarded at this meeting. Okay.
2 have individual ones, and then 2 have one envelope with perhaps 2 in it. I'm not sure. It didn't say, but
Oh, they separated. One's Babbage Road and the other is.
One's Leach and one's
there's
Ingstrom.
2 different.
Ingstrom.
Yeah.
While Phil's opening, is there a reason we're establishing a new committee for the restoration of the lighthouse and not doing that through the Lighthouse Committee?
Well, Dave will get to that.
Okay, great. Well, then if Dave's going to get to it, let's not take it out of order while Phil's opening.
This copy contains the details of the bid.
Don't have to show insurance until
Right.
so many days after.
Yeah, sign a contract. and after number of-
It should just be that form. Bid proposal form. We sent out 7 and we got back 4.
Well, better than 50%.
2 in town, 2 out of town.
Dave has the letter opener right there in front of him on the clipboard.
I got you something, Phil. Thank you, Tina.
Yeah,
you- we've got-
Suspense is killing me.
I've got a
Well,
sheet
Christmas
to
opener.
fill out all the numbers, I guess.
Okay.
Do you want to read me what you've got so
The
far?
Ingstrom bill bid, rather,
Yeah.
excuse me, is
From who? Who are we talking?
Who's the contract?
Dan
Dan
Daniel
Ford?
Ford.
I'm sorry?
Daniel Ford. And the bid is 62,400.
For Ingstrom?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Take this one. We got this one now.
This is a bid for. Not sure.
Is that the big one?
Sam Lanning. 118 Main Street Septic.
That's Leach.
That bid is $21,518.
Is that from the same people?
The folded paper came from the envelope and the
This
ledger
is,
paper.
Wilson.
Big envelope.
yeah, Wilson, this is 118 Main Road is 21.
Who's the contractor?
This is Wilson Construction and Landscaping.
Okay.
Okay, 21.
5/18/40. I wonder if there's a second one in here. Do we think this is all one, or is there?
Seems like a lot of specifications and
This appears to be a single.
I think there's a separate model for Wilson also.
Okay.
another one, so.
Okay, great.
okay. For Leach from Ford Enterprises, Daniel. $59,600.
Okay. A big range. Southern Maine?
Who, Dan Ford? Hope. He's from Hope.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So south of here, it's south of here. Is it though, really? I don't know. It might be more west.
Yes, there you
Is that which direction?
Hi.
And from Sam Lanning for 139 Babbage Road, septic.
This is from Wilson
Oh.
Construction.
Wilson Construction, Sam Lanning, general manager.
Yeah.
The bid is $21,989.60. Wonder where the 60 cents.
Anybody want to see any of these? Anybody curious about?
I almost lost the letter opener. Paul Hatch.
Where?
Paul Hatch and Engstrom's bid from Paul Hatch is $29,435. And the Leach, Robert Leach bid is $31,241.
Can somebody just give a little bit of background about why we are receiving these bids and how, I'm assuming it's because it's part of this community grant program, but a little bit of background would be helpful.
Bill, go ahead.
So, back in 2000, early 2000, under the Baldacci administration, they started a grant program to clean up cesspools, failed cesspools, where usually that leach into drainage ditches and find their way offshore. So at that point, I think we did about, during his 8 years administration, we did about 15, we got rid of 15 cesspools and put in septic systems. The LePage administration did away with that program. And now in the Mills administration, they're bringing it back. And we put it out, we only got two applicants. It's income-based. If you make over 40,000 taxable income, you don't qualify, and then it stages down. If you're 0 to 5,000, you get 100% pay. 5 to 10, you get 90%. 10 to 15, it gradually goes down to how much you have to contribute. It's really a great program.
So it's a state program that the town helps community members.
That's right. And I administer it.
Okay.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, great.
All right, from JP Excavation and Transportation. Dory Engstrom's property. The bid is $25,979.06.
Six.
06.
You're gonna underbid it by 2 cents there. That is the only bid from this
Yeah,
company.
he wasn't gonna bid on that.
Wait, was it? Okay.
Okay, well, there's no action to be taken. We're not the ones who actually decide on whether these get awarded. So we've opened the bids. Great. And we're done. And
We'll put them all together.
I got them all together here. I don't know what we're going to do with them. Keep them for now. Give them to the state.
We can talk tomorrow.
I've got to send them up. I've got to send them up. I got-
Bill, do you want any of these envelopes to keep them separate or anything?
Janet's got it under control.
Okay.
Throw 'em up in the air.
Thank you.
So they're all open. I've got the tally here.
Good job, Bill.
Okay.
It's
Bill, is
been
there-
opening we've had to deal with.
I know. Is
Good
there
job.
Anything you need, Bill, before we move on?
No, you want an FYI?
Sure.
No.
Yes, we do. Go ahead.
So on the leach.
Yeah.
Could be a lot, it's changing hands. Unfortunately, Bob passed away and the state knows of it. And so it's going to be passed on to Tara. So the family members say.
Yeah.
And she will now be we have to see her 1040.
Yeah.
See where she qualifies. Talking to her, it seems like she should qualify fine, but
It's
when we get back, as this moves along, we won't sign any contract with the low bidder for leach until we have all that in place. Okay,
Thank you very much for the info and for showing up.
all right, thanks for being here.
Moving on, request to establish a new ad hoc committee, the Point Light Station Restoration Committee. I believe, well, I see that both Yvette and Dave are here as part of that potential appointments to that committee. So I guess the question I have is why not do this as part of just the Lighthouse Committee? And so, go ahead.
I agree. There's no reason to have an ad hoc committee, so we can probably table that. It was at the encouragement of Janet to come up with some communication between the Restoration Committee and the Select Board, and it was. I'm just as happy to be under the Lighthouse Committee as a subcommittee, and that's how it was originally described to the members in August as a subcommittee of the Lighthouse Committee.
Okay. Well, any discussion about that?
Right. I would just say that they first started out as wanting to do a gala, something in memory perhaps of Charlotte, and make it a fundraiser. And then they agreed, they didn't know how much money to fundraise for, so this kind of morphed out and out and out, and yeah, no, I'm happy if they're not, they've got more people on the committee that are on the museum committee, so that was my only concern of, like I was saying with Shay, about subcommittees. We don't really have subcommittees that people aren't appointed. So, and they've maxed out perhaps how many people are on the committee. Hard enough to keep track of committees and people on committees. So that's why I was just asking Dave to come to the board and just say what they were doing. And I think, they're moving in a good direction with getting information, and Dave may speak to that about restoration projects and coming up with fundraising. Whether they're going to fundraise, I haven't heard that lately. They're still waiting for an amount, I guess, from work that they're,
Trying to find out how much they really need to get.
Yeah, that's the, before we ask any organization for money, we have to know how much we need to ask the organizations. And so just yesterday, we contacted or had a meeting from an engineer from a historic preservation company, and they are in the process of giving us a proposal and a bid to do an assessment of the lighthouse in the context of sea level rise, whether we should move it, raise it, or leave it alone.
Great. That sounds good. Any other questions for Dave?
I guess of looks like there's 10 names here. How many of those folks are already on the Lighthouse Committee?
Approximately 6. And one of the members that's listed there has decided not to be on the committee any longer, and that was Miss Donna Seymour. The rest of the individuals on that list are additions to provide information for public relations as the committee proceeds to raise monies. So should I go ahead and suggest that those names be added to the Lighthouse Committee?
Well, if you want to increase the number of members, I mean, we just go by what was set originally, and that's,
I mean, it strikes me as a lot to do. I mean, it seems like we should be able to accomplish what we need with the Lighthouse Committee. If we need to appoint people to fill spaces, that's fine, I think. But if there are other people who want to be involved with a particular project, I don't know that they necessarily even have to be part of that committee.
they don't, they just, they can't vote on things, so they
Right.
don't need to.
And I don't,
Anybody could attend.
I guess I'm not in favor of augmenting the Lighthouse Committee to have a lot of people on it personally.
And, yeah, they can still attend and.
Yeah, they can attend and participate, and I, you know, like most committees, I think you probably are gonna have a lot of unanimous agreement about things moving forward, and that the reality of some people who were actively involved in the fundraising not voting is just sort of part of that process. But that's, I certainly, if others feel strongly about adding members to the Lighthouse Committee, it's not a huge thing. It just strikes me as they've got a committee set up to handle the lighthouse, and they ought to be tackling this particular project for the lighthouse too. Thoughts from other select board members?
I agree. I think adding another committee when we have one that's could be charged with this is, I'd rather keep a committee and have, you know, within that committee delineate who has the energy for a specific project and how to best to work together. I do think, you know, it is exciting, and I applaud, like, I mean, it seems like there is a lot of energy and momentum that is building around this, and it's nice to see so many people who are engaged in the conversation. So I think not having an ad hoc committee is, from my perspective, not, you know, kind of a sign of whatever, trying to discourage the project or work in any way, but
It
you know,
doesn't reflect the select board's opinion of the project, and we've
Right.
talked a lot about refinishing the lighthouse, and it sounds like the scope of what we're talking about now is even beyond that. So I think it's really good that there are folks involved who have the time and energy to chase this down, because I know it's been on the agenda for the lighthouse for years now. So,
And I think when it comes to the budget, which I know they're going to, and we will be working on, we can add under the museum another section for restoration or whatever we want to.
anything else? Dave or Yvette, do you have anything else on this?
Sounds great. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you very much.
We'll come back with some requests in the springtime. Thank you.
Great, appreciate it. That there are, Fred, is there
And there
anything,
is one pesticide safety on Islesboro.
right, the appointment where we're not quite there yet.
Oh,
Fred, is there
Just
anything? Go ahead, Fred.
No, I was just saying I was enjoying listening.
Okay, great. Well, always good. Always glad to have you here and participate. Before we move on, other business. Paige, this is for you. Other business, here we are.
So, yeah, I don't got information, things we can talk about. I didn't get a chance to talk to a couple of you and all the board members, but anyhow, looking at the streaming setup that we've got, I know you're interested in changes, and so I want to run by some of what I'm looking at before I move forward with it, make sure I'm on path, on target for what you want. As you know, you've got this TV here. It's kind of hard, or if there's a public in here, they can't see, so on. So there's two options really. One is put a big TV in the front, or the other is two smaller TVs, one facing the front, one facing the rear. After conversations, it sounds like the easiest thing is one big one at the front and kind of change the layout of the room a little bit, which essentially is two arcs of these. I think an idea Tina had pretty much is, Dave, you would shift over kind of where Shay is, these would shift down. And then this side would shift down just a little bit and open up the center. And then the TV would be up there. And then what would happen is there'd be another little desk area over here set up for who's hosting the meetings, who's running the meetings, and in terms of the Zoom. And so then essentially, the other pieces of equipment and the changes would be, at the moment, we would tend to use the same microphone, but I think that's something that would need to change. We can talk about that in a second. So that would stay, and the computer that would go in the whatever we want to call it, the hosting station, administration station, that would be what Tina's using now, but we've got a new computer for Tina now that's in my office and pretty well configured. I got to bring in and move over. So we would just use that computer to do the hosting, and it would be something that would be permanently set up, always there. And then also right out of the gate, we just can use the regular speaker that's on the TV that we get. I think another thing we'd look at later is improving that quality, for especially when there's more people in the rooms and sound is more of an issue. Let's see here, watch some of the notes, make sure I'm covering some of the things I'm looking at. In terms of the room, the TV, if it's going to be up in the front and everyone's going to be able to see, it's going to be a large screen TV, you know, at least 70 inch, 80 inch in that range. Those kind of TVs can be expensive, but on the other hand, I think what we need can be what I would call a cheap TV, meaning it doesn't need to have all the good characteristics. So short of it is, I've seen some 70 inches for around $600 that aren't bad. So $600 to $1,000 range, we could get a good TV that would sit up there and the entire room would easily be able to see. So that's
Got
certainly,
1080 capability.
excuse me?
It has 1080 capability.
Oh, yeah, any of the TVs would be 1080. That's not an issue pretty much. More it's all refresh speed and how many ports and all kinds of things we don't care. All we care is one port and you can see it pretty much. So so I think that would simplify that whole choice. And then in terms of the I think that would be something good out of the gate to get us going. Right now, Janet has an account set up, the One Pro account, which I think we probably would want to eventually move to at least 2 Pro accounts. The idea being, with the One Pro account, you can only do 1 meeting at a time. So you need 1 account per meeting you want to have. So if someone else, some other committee wanted to meet at the same time, you wouldn't be able to. So that's just 150 a year, so pretty minor, and we don't need to do it out of the gate. I think some of this we would progress with over time. In terms of how to operate it, you know, after talking to people, what looks reasonable to me, Tina says she wants to do it all.
I didn't say that.
You didn't say that. Actually, I think Carrie, the secretary, I've talked with her and she said she's willing to take that on, and I think she could be the primary person. I think Tina obviously could be a good backup if she's not available. But that would be the kind of thing where, you know, Carrie would be down there in the station, and obviously she should also be doing the minutes, which I think would happen after the meeting. We'll talk about some of that. The other thing that can happen is in meetings when it's not going to be a Zoom meeting, there could be another temporary table, like one of those little ones, set up where the secretary then could just sit over there, like, as you know, typically happens. And I think you all are pretty familiar with the Zoom. I see are you all familiar with the idea of meetings versus the webinars? Pretty much. Okay, good. Well, then I would recommend, I think definitely we would want to move in the direction of the webinar where you have more control over it. And I think the direction out of the gate would be, you guys really aren't going to have to do much of anything with it. Area would be running that. And then for the most part, what would be displaying on the screen, what everyone's seeing in the public would be, you know, from a camera. I think what we do is take the existing camera and try to put it up here on the ceiling where it would look this way. And that's what would be displaying there. But also if there are remote speakers, of course, they could be put on. And it can happen too that remote people, public can be added on, but that would be under the control decision of the chair and the oath. So I think that would be the way to start to run it, I think. With the
Can I ask a question about webinars? Do you have to be invited?
Yeah, there's work to be done up front. So you make the panelists, that's what Carrie would do. So, I mean, we can talk
It's
about,
also a public invite too.
correct, you have the public invite, and the public invite would let you be the, what do they call it, the attendee, where basically you can't do anything other than you can raise your hand. And then the host can say, oh, they got the hand raised, and ask the chair, do you want to, entertain this person? And then you can bring them on. The host then can convert that person into a participant who then can now be on the screen, share screen, do those kind of things. Should they decide, if they don't, it's just say, for example, raise the hand, the host could say, they have a question, is there a pier there on the island? Relay that to the committee answers it, and on you go. So,
It's what Michael was doing when he was running the meetings. It was
Exactly,
pretty much a
exactly.
webinar.
Right.
exactly.
It's just more control for the people who are not participants in the meeting, who are just calling in as from the public.
And,
So-
and easier to control the whole thing with the sound problems and all the
Yeah.
rest.
Right,
The
you can
host has much more control. in the whole
shut everybody off if you have people's, echoing and being bad, you can just,
And
use
you
them.
can also have complete control of preventing any of the meeting bombs where they come in and do whatever they wanted to disrupt the meeting, which fortunately we haven't had that, but
right,
it
it does happen, it happens out there in the world
It
sometimes.
does happen. So I think that would be the way to start. You can still do regular meetings if you want, but focus on that. So some of that, of course, means what Carrie would be taking on is before the meeting, like you're saying, links would be sent out to the participants who would join in, and then a general population invite would be sent out. All the documents get loaded up like happens now with constant contact, however, reminder emails on the meeting, and then before the meeting started, of course, Carrie then would go and start the hosting up, verify video, audio, all the rest, make sure the meeting's ready to go. So pretty much you just come in and just use it and then start the recording. I think that would be the other thing, is record on the hosting service like you're doing now. Bring it down, clean it up, get it ready for the next meeting, and then do all the assisting during the meeting. I guess really would be happening is that's interacting, I would presume, more with the chair straight on, and then control the meeting to the finish, end the meeting, download it, groom it. So I think pretty obvious. I don't think there's any real issues with any of that. The other thing I would be looking at is down the road. I think the real issue in my mind is the audio. I think that's the biggest challenge with all this. And I think there'd be some looking at doing different things with microphones. There's all kinds of things that can happen. Some of it is each desk can have its own microphone. Another thing that can happen, I know they have panels, like a ceiling panel where there's microphones in it. It takes the whole room into consideration. Something like that's like $5,000, but they get the microphones and the control panel to run it. That's, you're gonna get into a couple grand too, but I think relatively soon is something you're gonna want to look at, because that's gonna work okay for the short term, but it's not really gonna resolve it. You're gonna have to get more microphones. So just food for thought with that. That's next step, I think. But if that all sounds like the right idea for you guys, then, I can look and get a TV, get it mounted on the wall, and work with Janet to get something set up over here, get Tina's machine in, set up over here. I would say hopefully by the next meeting, have that in place, but that would be the intent anyhow.
Great. Well, thanks for all the information and doing all the legwork on this page. I guess the primary question is everybody in agreement that the TV in the front is the best layout? I think that's really like the foundational question about what the room is going to be laid out like.
Gabe, can I get a definition of where the front of the room is? I'm looking at you, so, okay.
Right behind me, I believe, right where this, the pull down.
Exactly.
So how would the members of the committee, the select board, be able to see the Zoom participants?
So I think what would happen is there would be no one sitting where I am. And then everybody would either slide in one direction or the other. And so I think everybody except for me, Shay maybe would have to turn a little bit more around. But that's what it would be. Or the alternative is perhaps two TVs on the sides that could be seen, or TVs facing each direction where there's one facing sort of what we're looking at now and one facing the audience. So if anybody's here in person, they also can see.
I was just ruminating on whether it was more important for the audience who happened to be there in person to see the other participants, or for the select board to see the other participants, and how to emphasize that the select board needs to be able to see those visitors at least equal to, if not more than, the visitors coming into the room, if I'm being clear there. But that's, you sort of answered my question when you said that's the front. I didn't know, I couldn't see Paige, so I didn't know where he was gesturing.
Yeah, so right behind me right now is, you know, one potential location for a large TV versus perhaps a couple of smaller TVs in different locations that let everybody see. When I was at the budget committee meetings for Waldo County, they only had it so that the committee members could see other people or attendees in the meeting. And there was a screen that was not centered like this one is. It was off to one side, and anybody who was here in person could not see, I don't believe, people who had called in. But this was also for them a relatively new thing that they were trying to figure out. And the TV was just on a cart that had been rolled in. So it wasn't a permanent setup. It was trying to make it work, sort of like what we have right now with the TV in the front.
I mean, I personally feel like for what we've had so far, like it's nice. I mean, I feel like you're right around the table with us, Lauren. I mean, I think like it is the best we've had so far. And I think I would support it being there. I mean, I think it's not worth spending tons of money on, but like that kind of rolly desk that the TV is currently on, if something like that was replaced, all of these clunky desks, it would make this a pretty fluid meeting area, so that if there weren't members of the public, we could easily kind of just center around it. So it felt like we were all around a table rather than, but.
It sounds like there's a consensus. We ought to put the TV at the front of the room.
Why not where the whiteboard is?
So we could put it there.
And then I could have Lauren over here with me.
That's right. Yeah, that's another possibility.
And then, I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out how to get Lauren on my side.
Yeah, I think you could do that where you.
I'm already there, Melissa.
With the whole arc of the desk kind of goes from the edge of Phil's and arcs down this way, because then you all can see right over you if you do that kind of approach.
I was really just being argumentative to get Lauren. And so I'm actually not contributing anything helpful. I'm just, everybody else said yes, so I had to say no.
So Paige, you think the best way to go is one TV rather than two?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think the best way to go is the two TVs in different directions, but I don't think it's the easiest to implement. You know?
I think that it also gives you a lot of room for something to go askew.
And, you know,
Because if you have one that's not syncing up, or you have one that's providing weird feedback, that's going to provide different problems.
Technically, I think it would be easy enough, because basically what it will be is an HDMI switch. The TVs, all the devices would plug into one switch. They're all seeing the same thing. So it shouldn't be a problem, but.
maybe a good first step is if we get a big TV for the front of the room and we don't like hardwire or bury any wires anywhere. So if we decide after a meeting that this is really not a useful way to do it, we could think about moving it there or switching it in another way and just not try to install anything permanently. Say like, yeah, exactly. And we could still have one big TV, let's say, for example, here, and this would be, let's say, for the select board to look at, and then a smaller TV that was over to the side, sort of angled to the audience. I mean, we could do that if we wanted to, but try out the front of the room first. And if that's a good situation, then maybe we just leave it like that and we're happy with it.
Abe,
Yes.
one of the things that we're gonna do over at Public Safety is we looked at buying wheel stands for the TV we're putting in over there. I know you have to deal a little bit with cords and stuff, but the big TV would mount on a stand. You'd have cubbies and stuff underneath it, and you could actually wheel it around in the room, adjust it as you'd like to.
Yep, and I think that was something that Shay mentioned too, about the making the situation a little bit more fluid, so that if we needed to change for a particular meeting, it's hard to imagine who might show up and want to participate and the types of meetings you might have, but it certainly seems like there's the potential to want to have something slightly different depending on the meeting. So I think that's a good idea.
One challenge on that side to me is keeping the wiring so it's not in the way of people. That turns into the real challenge.
Yep. Especially when you're adding it after the fact and not like building it into a new room,
Pretty much, I mean, if we put them in here now, it's not a big deal, because we can run things up into the ceiling and across that way.
Yeah.
That's not a major ordeal, but when things are on
Carts.
wheels or something, it's gonna have to go along the floor. somehow get over to the station. Yeah.
Trying to get rid of some boards.
Well, I think the consensus is let's put a big screen in the front. We'll try it out and hope that it's exactly what we want. And if not, then we'll maybe make adjustments. And then I think we can take on the questions about microphones and speakers and stuff down the line once we're happy with the setup we have. Does that sound like it?
Isn't that tonight? What's going on? All right, that sounds good.
Thank you very much, Paige. Does anybody have any other questions, thoughts for Paige before we continue? Hearing none. On to approving the warrant number 15. I'd entertain a motion to approve warrant number 15 for year 22.
Can I actually ask a question just about Zoom? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
please. No, go ahead.
But just, wasn't there a harbor committee meeting that's supposed to start at 6:30 and are we causing a problem? Is there a Zoom
Were they zooming?
issue?
They were not zooming.
Okay, great. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Where are they? That's the
Where are
question.
Oh, okay, well,
Is it
That's-
6:30 or 7?
It was supposed to be 6:30.
okay, well, sorry to
The
disrupt
meeting
things.
is off.
Right. Okay.
Uh,
They'd be at the door. Over. Is the front door open?
Bill got in. Oh, he was key. He got in.
The door was open.
Okay,
They might be
sorry.
all
I'm
outside.
not trying to
Has
derail
anybody
things,
said
but
anything to me? I
I'll go check.
have a missed phone call.
I think it's their agenda, so I.
Who did I miss a call from? Looks like spam. So
Where
Is it
are you? Let us
Ken?
in.
it's not a number I have in my phone. And they didn't leave a message. All right. Moving on.
I would move that we approve warrant number 15.
Great. Moved by Shay,
Second.
second by Melissa. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. The warrant is approved. We are moving on to appointments. It looks like we're not appointing anybody to a special Lighthouse Committee. The only appointment is Jerry Hamlin for the Pesticide Safety
So
Committee.
moved.
Moved by Shay. Second by Phil. Any discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye.
That is it. Now we do have, there's a couple things that need to be signed. This is the Jerry Hamlin. Is there more than one under there? Are those all the
And
ones?
these
that-
are all the other ones.
the
So we
top.
just want to do the top one there.
Just the top. Janet, I guess I'm just gonna leave all of these.
Yep.
It's for you,
Can I do it in writing? Doesn't
whatever
matter.
you want. It's a free for all.
It's a free for all.
I don't think any,
Liz,
I don't think anybody has rejected a committee member because one of the select boards signed in red ink. And if it happens now, well, so be it. You know, there's gotta be enough signatures that even if yours is disqualified, she'll still be on the committee.
Did that invalidate it?
I like the idea of someone pouring through the paperwork of committee nominations to look for some red ink.
So I'm gun shy because the state of Maine kicked something back to me because I had filled it out in black ink and a person had signed it in blue ink. So it wasn't done together. And it was, we're in COVID. I don't want him touching my pen. And they were like, oh, and well, that makes sense. But sign it all in black ink. And I'm like, no, photocopied it. It all came out in black and sent it that way. But I was like, so I think that's how come I'm gun shy about it now. I'm not resending something because the ink didn't match.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of
It's so
times
ridiculous.
you see people want to have blue ink, so it's clear that it's the original and not a copy.
Gotcha.
But that said, it's pretty easy now to get a color photocopy. So,
I'm like, no,
you know, whatever.
not doing.
Um, Anyway,
Lauren, do we get to see the baby yet?
chair comments. I'd entertain a motion that for the next meeting, we see the baby.
The baby is darling and his name is Felix and he's just about that big. He's just a little bitty, maybe that big.
I was gonna say, oh my goodness.
Need to see.
Other than that, no comments. Vice Chair comment, Shay.
I don't have any comments tonight.
No comments from Shay. Lauren, you have an opportunity. Comments from Lauren.
It's beautiful and sunny and warm here, but I miss Islesboro.
You're always welcome to come back, Lauren. Phil.
Lauren, thank you for the party house. Nothing other than that.
Melissa, you get the last word.
Saw what the town released today that it was 21 current cases in the last 2 weeks. Want to send out best wishes, and we're thinking of everyone that's affected by COVID at this time. Wash your hands. Nirvana said it best. People are stupid and contagious. Be careful.
I was thinking it smells like Teen Spirit. I
Yes.
don't know. I was like, where are we going with this? Anyway, motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second, aye. Great. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Anytime I can work in a Kurt Cobain quote into an official town meeting, I mean, you have to know I'm your girl. So.
You might as well. I mean,
Yeah.